Hi, I'm Parker.
I'm Tim.
And this is the Rage Podcast, where today we're going to talk about probably one of the most well-known passages of Scripture to
the story itself. Maybe not the details, but the story
not the
itself.
details, but the story itself.
Yeah.
Noah's Ark. We go through Genesis, right? We obviously have creation. We have the fall. We have... Is Tower of Babel before the flood?
Tower of Babel is before the flood. No, Tower of Babel is after the flood.
The flood, okay, and then we just presented towards the Tower of Babel after that.
But, spoiler alert, but yeah.
But today we're going to talk about the flood. And as I was, trolling on the internet, as I was scrolling through the internet, I guess is the better way I could have said it. But I come across a lot of people who are using Noah's Ark to, kind of like debunk the faith and, all these like atheist, like apologetics almost is what they were using. And there was a lot of videos and a lot of people who used commentary on like, the creationist views and how this is wrong and how Noah's Ark was completely impossible and all these things. And, those are good videos to watch, especially even if you are a Christian or not, because you get to learn. I feel like I learn more when I have a person tell me how it's wrong than, because that makes me have to go improve my faith.
Exactly.
So that was one of the benefits from it. But here's some of the stats that I received from a couple videos that people just found to be, this is impossible.
All right, let's hear this.
Noah's Ark would have been 510 feet long. That would have been the largest wooden boat ever built. Okay?
Even to this day.
Even to this day.
Yeah.
8 people as the zookeepers, over 14,000 individual animals. Okay? So 8 people taking care of that many animals. And how on earth did the plants ever come back on Earth? Okay? They were like, God doesn't really mention much about, the vegetation coming back. How did the grass, the plants, the trees, the fruit, how did they come back? How did they survive under a year of water? So all those things existed, and those we don't have exact answers in here because we don't need them.
That's exactly right.
And now that is, if you're not a Christian, which I don't know if you're in the audience and not a Christian.
Most of you are, but even if you're not, this is still for you.
Even if you're not, when you hear me say I don't need them, your ears start to bleed. Okay. Because you're like, oh, all this faith and whimsical nonsense. I was like, if I'm going to believe that Jesus can raise a man from the dead, what is to stop me from believing that God can sustain, the creator of the earth, sustain earth through a flood, through an ark, through the story? Yeah,
I mean, even if you go back and read the actual biblical text, and as Parker mentioned, and we're not going to read it here because we want y'all to stay awake till the end of this, but the dimensions of the ark were very clearly set out, what kind of wood was to be used, how it was to be attached, how we're supposed to coat it with tar, all that stuff is in there. And the interesting thing about that is, even if that's all that Noah got, and he literally had elephants come help him lift these things into place and all that, even if that's the way it happened, just the fact that Noah, a simple guy who didn't even have like a triangle, I mean, he had nothing, was able to take on a construction project of the size that Parker just described. That in itself is beyond what any person could do.
Yes.
And so there's a word we use to describe this. I assume that's the word you're going toward.
It was 8 people, okay? Yeah. There was only technically really only 4 that would probably have been allowed to work on the ark.
Correct.
Okay, I mean, the other were the wives and everything, but in societal changes, don't cancel me or anything.
Yeah, but even if they're all 8 of them, it's still, it's not like with the women helping him, it wouldn't go any faster.
Yeah, I guess that was a pointless.
Like, here's this 7-ton beam. Can you lift this up?
Throw that up there.
Yeah. Come on, what good are you around here, right? Yeah.
But so and that's nothing other than a miracle. Okay,
yeah.
We see miracles all the time.
That's the word.
But the problem that we have around Noah's Ark is none of the other miracles of God ever went into, I guess, such descriptive language when you read the biblical text, as Tim mentioned. Yeah. It tells you the foot, the length, the width, the height, the rooms, how the animals should go on. And all those things.
And we don't want to sit around and say that Noah was the world's first engineer, which maybe he was, but he had to get that from somewhere.
Yeah.
That knowledge had to come from somewhere.
So why, I guess, the problem I have, and why we're going to have this discussion today, is because accept things to be miracles.
Yes.
Okay?
And that's enough. That's enough. I don't need to explain it anymore. That it's a miraculous thing that happened.
Yeah. And Tim, I was actually having a conversation with Tim about why don't we see, like the miracles and the healings like we did in Jesus' time. Well, he was like, he uses the to steal his thunder. Like modern medicine itself is a miracle. Okay, Noah could he could probably understand the concept of maybe a hammer and nail, possibly. He could probably build a boat, maybe not an ark. That was a miracle again. But Noah certainly knew nothing about penicillin.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, think about the location where he even built the ark. Was there even enough water to float that thing that big there?
Yeah.
I mean, he wasn't exactly a seafaring man. I think he was a vineyard grower, wasn't he? Yeah. So what do you know about boats?
Okay. Weird. Okay. I gotta say this now.
Yeah.
Really, really weird passage comes up after the flood.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
I So here's what I'm gonna share you a little personal touch of Parker Miley's life. I'm gonna start. I've never read the Bible chronologically in the sense like I've read from Genesis to Revelations, but I've never read like within the time frame. So like how Genesis and then technically Job and then all the other stories all kind of mixed together.
They're not in the Bible in order.
Yeah. So I want to read them all in order is what I'm going to try to do this year and everything like that. But I'm sure I've read this before, but it comes across so Noah after the flood and everything, and he's still a vineyard man. Well, he has and this is what's weird. We just had the flood. Water was around the earth for about a year. Okay, about 365 days. Maybe it's 350 days. Okay, and Noah has his vineyard. It's completely fine. He's making wine. He got drunk with wine. He was naked. One of his sons saw him.
Hang on, no, he passed out.
Yeah, he passed out naked
on the ground.
Passed out naked on the ground. One of his sons saw him.
Yeah.
Okay, and then the other two sons were like, "Oh, let's get something to cover Dad." Okay.
Yeah, and this is the guy that was chosen as the best representative of us. The guy that got saved. That's
so drunk he passed out naked.
Yeah.
Okay, and then all this happened, and then he wakes up. And he practically, in use modern terms, cusses out the son and son.
Yeah, and he curses his grandsons.
Yeah,
he's like, you didn't get the right guy, Noah. Come on, man.
Okay, that whole story, I mean, it's weird. Okay, that was a weird story. But I was like, what on earth was actually happening here?
Yeah.
I mean, and that's what's so, I find so...
And just to note, we're not calling that part a miracle. Go ahead.
Yeah, that's not a miracle.
Yeah,
that's just, bad family problems. Okay?
It's called, Noah was just like the rest of us. He was really screwed up.
Yeah. But, we go back. Let's go back to the ark a little bit.
Okay. Slight tangent there. Yeah.
But some like scientists have come up with the idea like there's no way that an ark this big during that time frame could ever been built. And again, that goes back to saying it was a miracle, guys. And then they say to feed the animals alone. All right. Well, you need a ship, another ark and a half, just full of food alone for all the animals to live that journey. All these things. So a lot of people, think that science and Christianity and faith and miracles don't go kind of hand in hand. I think, Tim mentioned when I asked him that question of why miracles don't happen, or why we don't see them much anymore, is because we've kind of I don't want to say we've understand how they've developed or grown. But the fact that, I myself can't tell you how penicillin works. Okay, I take the pill and it fixes
I turn the ignition in my car. I don't know how the thing starts. I don't know what happens in there. Yeah.
Some people do.
Yeah,
but even then, I still don't think someone can really grasp that whole concept. Okay, we've went from literally being hammer and nail people and discovering fire to creating pills and modern medicine and vaccines and all of those wonderful things that we have.
It's a miracle.
It is. Okay, I mean...
Yeah, we can all, debate the whole vaccine thing, and we don't want to go down that road, but the idea that these things exist is a miracle.
Absolutely. Yeah. And there's no way we could have ever gotten here without the miracles.
Without some kind of guidance, that's true.
So, I guess science and Christianity, I don't think clash. They actually work perfectly together.
Yeah.
I mean, we have science... to where you start to understand how things work. And, we're learning more about God, I think, in science, in a sense, than what we were, say 20 years ago.
Yeah. And just because we can explain something doesn't take the miracle end of it out.
Yeah.
Okay. Could we build an ark today with the technology we have? Yes, we could. We don't need to, but we could do that. And just because we can...
Knock on wood.
Yeah, knock on wood.
Yeah.
We don't have to, right? But the idea is we could do that, and we could explain how it works and the kind of engineering and why this does this and that. Yeah, we could explain all those things. That doesn't make it any less miraculous.
Yeah.
And sometimes we want to look at these things like Parker was saying. Well, you have to have 2 extra boats to carry all the food. Well, I seem to remember a story in the New Testament where somebody took a little bit of food and fed a whole bunch of people, like say 5,000. I remember a thing like that. There's no reason to think that some of those miracles weren't in play in the story of Noah's Ark and saving the animals. And I don't know if you want to go down this road, but almost every culture in the world has a Noah's Ark story. Yeah. You know, they have a story of animals being saved through a great flood. And so just because those cultures understand that something like that happened and whatever, doesn't take away the miraculous end of the story. Mm-hmm. And the fact that without God's intervention, none of those things would have been able to happen.
Okay, all right. That's point one of what we want to get of what I wanted to discuss today. And as we were doing our our very official pre-episode meeting. Pre-episode meeting, me and Tim were talking about what I wouldn't do to be in heaven when God was deciding to flood the earth. Because here's what's the beauty behind Scripture is that some parts it's very, very descriptive, and it leads in other parts it leads you up to your imagination.
Yes, that's very true.
Okay, Noah's Ark is the perfect in between.
Yeah.
It tells a story of God was talking to Noah and saying why he was doing this and what happened. Some people out there believe that Noah's Ark, God's up there in heaven laughing, like saying, you foolish people, like the evil villain, Tim's sermon 2 weeks ago.
The mustache twirling villain,
mustache twirling villain.
Yeah.
But
that's not at all how God was.
That's not how God was. I mean, when I read it, I just read it recently because I told you I was trying to read the Bible in chronological order, and I read it and it's just like God's to be sobbing. His heart is broken. He is in a state of despair. Mm-hmm. It's just, it was a challenge for him. It was, it was a serious matter for God.
And one of the things in Noah's Ark, the story of Noah's Ark illustrates very, very clearly. Actually, two things. First of all, the horrible sin, how horrible sin is. Mm-hmm. Paul says better than anybody, the wages of sin is death. Noah's Ark, there's no better illustration of that than Noah's Ark. Mm-hmm. But the second thing in the midst of that, though, is grace. Yeah, we talked about Noah, maybe not the best representative of us, because he had his problems. But you also have to identify the fact the guy floated around for nearly a year in a floating cat box he couldn't steer. So keep that in mind, too. But at the end of all that, there's grace in that, because God could have said, all y'all going. Mm-hmm. We're just going to start over with something better.
Start fresh,
And God decided not to do that. He preserved humanity because preserved all the animals, not just humanity, all life on board this boat. That was, I don't know if you want to get into the details of the boat, but this boat that was there. So, to me, that's a story of grace about how Noah floated to the top of the world, and was able to be sustained during this time. And again, to be able to explain how all these things worked and how a guy living where Noah lived with the technology and tools that Noah had and the resources he had could have created this thing without any help, I'm sorry, there's no way. This is a miraculous thing that happened. And the reason that that's important is because this wasn't Noah reading the tea leaves and deciding, I better build something and save all these animals. This was God saying, I want you saved, I want your family saved, and these animals are going to come. Again, how do you get a polar bear? There's got to be some miracle working on in here. We're working on this somewhere. So at the end of the day, it's a story about God preserving life on our planet. That's what the story of Noah is. God doing it. Using Noah to get it done, but God was the inspiration behind it. So,
well said.
Makes Noah's Ark a great story. And
as we, I think we're beginning to wind down the episode. Yeah. I have the challenge to go read Noah's Ark story. Yeah. And think about what was God feeling? Was God the laughing villain, or was he in a state of despair and heartbreak? Mm-hmm. What was God thinking? What was Noah? Try to picture some of those things, because that's what I think the beauty of Scripture is, and that's why it's called the living Word, because it's not a matter of interpretations, but it's a matter of what God reveals to you while you read you read His Word.
And how many villains do you know? Think about any movie with a super villain in it you've ever seen. How many of those villains are like, I'm going to kill everybody except that guy?
Yeah.
They're always about wiping out everyone. So if that's the position God took, then He did not do a very good job.
Yeah.
And that doesn't seem like how God does things. So.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess if God wanted it done that way, it would have been done that way.
Yeah. Literally, all he had to do is not whisper in Noah's ear. I mean, that's all he had to do, and everybody would have been gone. So. Yeah. Yeah. Well, great. So go get Noah's Ark story. Read. Pay attention to the details of the Ark itself, because there are a lot of details, which is incredible to think about. That those details even exist as to how large this ship was. It gives the story a sort of a gravity almost, kind of a realistic standpoint of how big this thing would have to be. So, go enjoy that story and read about it. See about the danger of sin and the depths of God's mercy and grace. And I don't know, that's a good challenge. Yeah, go read Noah's Ark.
Not a very long read.
No, it really isn't. Yeah. So. All right, everybody. Well, thanks for joining us this week. And everybody stay warm, stay safe, and stay out of the ditch if at all possible. And we'll be back next week with something incredibly insightful.
Yes, always.
Always. Have a good week, everybody.